communication systems, and air defense sites across Iran. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says it has launched retaliatory strikes on 18 U.S. military targets in Kuwait and Bahrain. Iran's Central Military Command has also announced the full closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Sapa Seremi has more from Tehran.
U.S. launches the strikes mostly on parts in southern Iran, like Desht Island, Sidi, Hengam Island, and Bandar Abbas. Bandar Abbas, as you know, is one of the most important ports of Iran. So many targets were hit, according to reports. I reported from capital. The capital was calm, and there were some reports that the air defense has been activated in the west of Tehran, but I personally didn't see anything. But many places in southern Iran were targeted. As you know, also last night, so many places in this area, I mean, the Bandar Abbas and Sidi were also targeted. And unfortunately, 2 water reservoirs were hit and damaged severely by U.S. forces. And officials have repeatedly warned that if Iran is attacked, they're going to retaliate strongly. And Iran is launching missiles towards the bases in the region. Apparently, some U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain and Jordan are being attacked as we are speaking. And also there was a statement from IRGC just 2 or 3 hours ago regarding the Strait of Hormuz. Let me read that to you. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy has announced the closure of the Strait of Hormuz until further notice, and citing repeated ceasefire violations by the United Nations. This announcement was read by State TV. He also said the Iranian armed forces will give a crushing and decisive response to any aggression and mischief by the U.S. military in the region. So for now, according to IRGC, the Strait of Hormuz is completely closed until further notice. As I said, as we were talking, I can see here some footage sent by some ordinary people to social media that missiles are being launched from different cities like Zanjan and Tabriz. But we don't know what the destinations are for sure now, but it seems that countries like Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait are among the targets that Iran has in mind.
The latest U.S. strikes against Iran come as President Donald Trump warns Tehran over delays in peace talks. Pressure is mounting on Trump, who is facing bipartisan criticism of U.S. military operations in Iran. Earlier this month, the House of Representatives passed a war powers resolution to end U.S. military action against Iran. Jim Spellman reports from Washington, D.C.
This is a ceasefire in name only. President Trump, for the second day in a row, ordering these military strikes on Iran. The White House is saying that the targets were all military targets, including air defense systems, radar installations, drone command and control centers in Iran, centering on the southern coastal area. Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, in his comments said that these strikes were intended to create pressure on Iran to continue these negotiations, but that the U.S. was happy to continue doing more attacks if they didn't feel progress was being made with the talks. So kind of a mixed message there from the Trump administration. That resolution is essentially symbolic at best. It would require going back to the Senate, and then it would require President Trump to sign it into law. There's no chance that he's going to do that, but it is a sign of growing political liability around this issue here. From the Democrats, we hear criticism of President Trump saying this was poorly thought out, that President Trump should not have withdrawn the United States from the JCPOA during Trump's first term to begin with. And they're extremely critical of the impact that this has had on inflation in the United States, primarily by driving up gas prices. We're also hearing some criticism of President Trump from his fellow MAGA Republicans who say they supported him because of his vows to start no new foreign wars. And here the U.S. is again stuck in a war with no clear way out. So while that resolution may be largely symbolic, the political pressure that this is putting on President Trump and the White House is very real, and that is really creating pressure to find some sort of resolution as soon as possible. But it's not really clear if President Trump and the White House want to take any of the off-ramps available, because they fear that could make them look weak if they end up with a deal that they don't feel is as strong as their base wants it to be.
China has called for diplomacy, restraint and ceasefires to end conflicts in the Middle East. Speaking at a UN Security Council meeting on Wednesday, Fu Zong, China's permanent representative to the UN, presented 4 proposals from Beijing. On Iran, it urged commitment to resolving disputes through peaceful means, a genuine ceasefire and the full withdrawal of Israeli troops from Lebanon and the restoration of normal shipping through the Straits of Hormuz. On Gaza, China called on the UN to push for a lasting ceasefire and implementing the 2-state solution. On Syria, China reiterated its support for advancing an inclusive political transition that is Syrian-led, Syrian-owned. It also urged all parties in Yemen to restart the peace process. And fourth, it called on the international community to provide aid for reconstruction and restoring economies and people's livelihoods affected by these conflicts. Meanwhile, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun says he will pursue negotiations with Israel until the end. He says diplomacy offers the best path to restore Lebanon's sovereignty. Israel is continuing its attacks on southern Lebanon, killing at least 18 people on Wednesday. CGTN's Jonathan Rigev reports from Tel Aviv.
I think Israel is trying to make a point that the strikes in southern Lebanon will continue, will intensify, despite the threats which came earlier this week from Iran, saying that any attack on Lebanon, not only on Beirut, but on the entire Lebanese territory, will bring a reaction from Iran. We're seeing that this is not happening. Another issue that we should perhaps consider is the fact that negotiations, despite the tensions in the Persian Gulf, negotiations between the U.S. and Iran are continuing, and this may have an effect on the Lebanese front as well, meaning that we know that Iran is insisting to add all of the fronts, including Lebanon, in this agreement. And even if things look far now, we know how unexpected these negotiations may be, how unexpected the American president may be. So Israel is somewhat concerned that it may wake up one morning, a day or a week or a month from now with an American demand to stop all operations in Lebanon, and in order to make sure that Israel advances as many of its plans as it wants to. Until that point, Israel is taking a lot of strikes, carrying out a lot of strikes in southern Lebanon now to achieve now whatever it may not be able to achieve sometime in the future.
Scholars and cultural leaders have gathered in Athens for the Second World Conference of Classics, jointly organized by China and Greece, themed Dialogue Between Ancient and Modern. The 2-day gathering focuses on classical civilizations and promoting academic exchanges. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas has more from Athens.
One of the main focuses of the second day of the conference here in Athens is how ancient thoughts and wisdom of Greek and Chinese civilizations can actually tackle some of the biggest challenges that the modern world is facing. Scholars from more than 20 countries, around 200 scholars, have gathered here to examine and discuss how Chinese and Greek ancient civilizations and their thoughts on governance, on ethics, on social division, and on conflict can be able to tackle the issues, can be able to give some of the answers in the biggest questions that our modern world is facing. And that is one of the key messages that has been broadly repeated here in Athens, is that the conflict of the world and conflicts of the world are facing today is not something that is unique. Actually, in the ancient world, there has been a number of conflicts and issues, but in order to be able to understand and overcome what we're facing today, we should not look anywhere further than our past. Let's have a listen.
What we can add from ancient studies is that, of course, this is not unique in history. There were turbulent times in the past, but people always tried to deal with these ancient classical turbulences, and they find their ways. And I think we may not learn exactly and apply that to modern times, but we can see how they approached it, how they tried to understand what's going on, and that we come to this deeper understanding is, I think, what we can learn.
So that discussion has been turning now into a practical cooperation, and we see that from the joint project between Greece and China in the western part of Greece that are digging up an archaeological site, an ancient city in the part of Etolo-Karnania. So the key message from here in Athens is that ancient studies, classical studies, are not actually something of the past, because with these discussions we can build more bridges to be able to look further in the future.
Japan's Liberal Democratic Party adopted a draft proposal on Tuesday on revising the country's 3 key security documents. The draft, citing China's alleged military buildup, highlights the need for significant increases in Japan's defense budget. Spokesperson Lin says by smearing China's normal military activities and hyping up tensions surrounding Japan, the proposal seeks to deceive the Japanese public and the international community and justify the need to speed up remilitarization in Japan. He said the international community must remain highly vigilant and take precautions. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry says Japan's right-wing forces have shifted the country's security policy towards an offensive and expansionary direction.
Hiding behind the pretext of bolstering defense and responding passively, Japan's right-wing forces have been aggressively developing powerful offensive intermediate and long-range weapons, boosting power projection and forward deployment, and steering Japan's security policy toward an offensive and expansionary direction. They seek to embed military expansion and war preparedness into national institutions, economic infrastructure and public opinion, chip away at the constraints imposed by Japan's constitution, international law and domestic legislation, renounce their obligation under international law, and challenge the post-war international order. This trajectory is becoming more pronounced and poses a real danger.
And that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
Holding guns. Words protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
DR Congo's Ebola outbreak spreads to new health zone as confirmed cases rise to 635. UN official warns that rising attacks in Sudan's Darfur region are impacting civilian infrastructure. And UN Refugee Agency says fewer people displaced worldwide in 2025, but long-term refugee crisis persists. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Welcome to Africa Live. Also ahead on the program, East African countries to present their spending plans for the next 12 months this Thursday. And in sports, South Africa and Mexico ready for 2026 FIFA World Cup opening match tonight. We begin with our continuing coverage of the Ebola outbreak, which has hit the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. The number of confirmed cases in the eastern DRC has risen to 635. This is according to the country's health ministry, which added that 127 deaths have been reported so far. Health Minister Roger Kamba says the Bundibugyo outbreak has spread to Chomia, a new health zone in Ituri province, bringing the total number of affected zones to 26. Kamba, however, notes that the response is gaining momentum with 8 new recoveries recorded in Ituri, bringing the total number of recovered patients to 30. The minister added that 490 tons of medicines have been deployed and laboratories strengthened across the eastern provinces of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu. On Wednesday, the U.S. State Department said it would provide an additional $20 million to help fight the outbreak in Africa, bringing its total direct support to more than $220 million. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization and local youth networks in eastern DRC have launched an Ebola awareness campaign to fight the growing outbreak. It comes as response efforts are being actively derailed by public denial and distrust, which often descend into violent community backlash, with health centers even targeted. CGTN's Sophia Shimechero has more.
Dozens of motorcycle taxi drivers drove through the streets of Bunia and Rwampara towns in Ituri province on Wednesday. The caravan displayed public health messages and illustrations on how to slow down the Ebola outbreak.
We've seen several people die from this disease. In any case, many people are dying. And that really scares us. But today we are thrilled about this mobilization. We are truly happy.
DRC declared its latest Ebola outbreak on May 15th, and Ituri remains the epicenter, accounting for more than 90% of the cases. However, emergency response efforts in the region remain deadlocked. Misinformation spreading in the communities has discouraged residents from adhering to health warnings or seeking medical help.
So far, we have lost 3 people in my family. I have to say that this disease is real. Those who don't believe it should know it is real.
There has been a lot of skepticism and people still deny the existence of the disease. But this at least allows us to mobilize the public, to raise awareness and to inform them that Ebola exists. There are still some who doubt it.
By mobilizing local actors like motorcycle taxi drivers, the initiative hopes to bridge gaps where formal healthcare efforts have fell on deaf ears. Sophia Shimechero, CGTN.
Meanwhile, 5 babies exposed to Ebola in the eastern DRC have been discharged from treatment after testing negative twice for the virus. The orphans were released from an Ebola treatment center in Bunia and given back to their caregivers. On Tuesday, Congolese authorities said 22 patients had recovered from the virus. CGTN's Caroline B. with the report.
The youngest of survivors leave isolation. 5 infants from a local orphanage, wrapped in the arms of medical staff, are handed over to caregivers, waiting to take them home after being given a clean bill of health.
We thank the hospital staff that the children are in good health. We are very grateful.
The children were among several isolated when a newborn, whose mother died of the virus in late May, was brought to their orphanage. Doctors monitored them closely and carried out repeated testing before approving their release on Tuesday, which they say is a massive victory.
We have the joy of presenting to you 5 children whom we want to discharge, because after 2 test samples, the results came back negative and are now considered non-cases or cured.
The babies will now be cared for by a religious congregation, while medical teams continue daily monitoring.
The
Sisters of the Daughters of Mary congregation have agreed to be a special foster family. That is where we will take the children. Everything has been prepared for them, and the follow-up will continue with the response and surveillance team, who will come every day to take the children's temperature and monitor them to see if they've responded favorably to the treatment.
Aid agencies say children remain especially vulnerable in a region already struggling with conflict, displacement and poverty. Save the Children is providing hygiene supplies and protective equipment to orphanages caring for at-risk children, including the baby's new home.
We have made a donation to the first orphanage and we are now expanding our activities to other orphanages. This will have hydroalcoholic gel, thermometers, soap for hand washing and bleach, so they can properly clean and disinfect the classrooms and dormitories where the children are.
Health workers hope the treatment of these babies offers encouragement during the unfolding outbreak as emergency measures continue to stop the spread of the virus. Caroline B., CGTN.
Meanwhile, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi reiterated his support for the DRC on Wednesday during a visit by his Congolese counterpart Felix Tshisekedi to Cairo. Officials are intensifying efforts to contain its spread, but response efforts have been challenged by attacks on health workers, skepticism among some locals, and the armed conflict in eastern hotspots. Tshisekedi welcomed Egypt's support.
I also expressed Egypt's solidarity with the Democratic Republic of Congo in confronting the current humanitarian crisis in the eastern part of the country and our readiness to provide all necessary forms of medical support, food assistance and humanitarian aid in this regard.
I also expressed to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi the gratitude of the Congolese people for the support that Egypt recently provided in fighting the Ebola epidemic. This act of solidarity at a time of health crisis requiring vigilance and reflects the depths of the bonds of friendship and the active, tangible and responsible cooperation among African brothers.
The DRC says it has repatriated all but one of the 15 migrants who were deported from the U.S. earlier this year under a third country deportation deal. The International Organization for Migration helped most of them return to their home countries. Congolese authorities say they are waiting to hear whether the U.S. will send more. CGTN's correspondent Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
In April this year, 15 South American migrants deported from the United States arrived in Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. They arrived under a U.S. migration policy that allows undocumented migrants to be deported to third countries. Their arrival sparked criticism from lawyers and human rights activists across the world. But now, the DRC Interior Minister, Jacquemain Shabani, says nearly all of them have left the country.
Today, after that midnight flight, only one person remains. 3 individuals boarded the plane and voluntarily chose to leave the DRC for their countries of origin. We have only one person left among the 15. He has already started the administrative process of leaving Congo.
It's still not clear whether all the migrants left the DRC voluntarily. In April, some migrants said they were facing pressure to return to their countries and had not been given other options. The U.S. government temporarily stopped flights to the DRC because of the Ebola outbreak. The migrants' departure has drawn mixed reactions in Kinshasa.
The government's decision to welcome the migrants is a good thing because Congo is a hospitable country. We thank the President for that. We welcome everyone who wants to migrate to our country. I lived in Johannesburg and had to leave because many of us were suffering there. Our government should think about Congolese citizens living in South Africa as well.
D'abord, cette question est trop floue, pour la simple raison. Première raison, quand ces gens sont venus.
There's a lack of transparency in that deal. First of all, Parliament was not informed when the migrants arrived, and now they are telling us they have returned. What assurance do we have that they have left? Something is wrong in there.
The International Organization for Migration says the DRC government requested it to provide assistance to migrants who chose to return to their home countries voluntarily. The US has signed similar deportation deals with other African countries like Eswatini, Equatorial Guinea, South Sudan, Rwanda, and Uganda.
Authorities in the DRC say the deportation deal was fully financed by the US government and that accepting the migrants was consistent with the country's commitment to human dignity and international solidarity. They are now waiting to hear whether Washington intends to send more migrants under the arrangement. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The United Nations is warning that escalating attacks on critical infrastructure in Sudan are severely disrupting humanitarian operations and placing civilians at even a greater risk. Aid agencies say the destruction of bridges and roads in Darfur and South Kordofan is cutting off key supply routes, just as humanitarian needs continue to rise amid the country's ongoing conflict. CGTN's Joy Kiruki Juma has the details.
The continuing conflict between the Sudanese National Army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces is increasingly making a dire situation worse. The United Nations says humanitarian access across parts of Sudan remains very fragile, with key transport routes relied upon for aid deliveries becoming extremely risky.
Our humanitarian colleagues are warning that escalating attacks on bridges, roads, and other critical civilian infrastructure are disrupting humanitarian access and putting civilians at further risk. While humanitarian movements along the Jenaina-Zelengi Road, linking West and Central Darfur, resumed today after a brief suspension due to insecurity and rising intercommunal tensions, access remains fragile.
According to the UN, overnight explosions reportedly struck the Ardamata Bridge in West Darfur, a vital crossing linking El Jenaina to areas near the border with Chad and an important route for humanitarian supplies entering Darfur. According to the UN, 2 bridges connecting South Kordofan cities of Kadugli and Diling were also destroyed over the weekend, further complicating civilian movement and aid operations as seasonal rains approach. Humanitarian agencies warn that once the rains intensify, alternative access routes may become impossible. Meanwhile, drone activity continues to heighten insecurity across the country, with strikes reported in Diling and a drone reportedly shot down in Omdurman near the capital Khartoum.
We reiterate our call on all parties to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure and to facilitate rapid, safe, unhindered, and sustained humanitarian access.
Sudan has been engulfed in conflict since April 2023, when fighting erupted between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, triggering one of the world's largest humanitarian crises and displacing millions across the country. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
While Sudan's displacement crisis is part of a broader trend across the world, but there are signs it is improving. According to a UN Refugee Agency report, the number of people displaced globally by conflict and persecution dropped in 2025 for the first time in 10 years. 5.4 million people fled their homes last year. However, returns among refugees and internally displaced peoples surged to 14.7 million, a 50% increase and the second highest figure since 1965. It all means that the total number of refugees globally in 2025 fell by 3% to 41.6 million. That included 6 million Palestinians. Most returns occurred in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Syria, Afghanistan, Ukraine and Myanmar. Despite these challenges remain. Many continue to suffer from limited access to basic services, widespread infrastructure damage, and ongoing violence persist. About 2.9 million Afghans returned due to strict policies in neighboring countries, while Syria saw almost 3 times the number that returned in 2024 amid ongoing instability and weak economic conditions. The report also warns of a continuing crisis in the Middle East, with recent displacements in Iran and Lebanon since the joint US-Israeli strikes on the countries in February. The UNHCR says it aims to have the number of refugees needing assistance by 2035 by supporting job creation and education opportunities in low and middle-income countries where most refugees are hosted, as well as voluntary returns to support refugee reintegration. Let's now turn to Tanzania, a country in East Africa which is known around the world for its diverse wildlife, but equally for its dedication to conserving the creatures that roam its vast grasslands. Boasting more than 1,400 kilometers of tropical Indian Ocean coastline, it is equally renowned for its spectacular marine life. However, conservation efforts in this sector are not as strong as on land due to various factors, leading to concerns of degradation. That's something one marine scientist in Dar es Salaam has been trying to resolve. CGTN's Isaac Lucando has more.
For marine scientist Nancy Iraba, 2021 marked a turning point. At the age of 27, she began learning to scuba dive. It was a journey that eventually made her Tanzania's first female dive master and part of a small group of Tanzanians who can work underwater.
90% of African marine scientists can't swim or dive, and most of the reasons were associated with high cost of diving. Like in Dar es Salaam at that time, there was only one scuba dive center, which was toured to the Western tourists.
Before becoming a diver, she studied octopuses. But getting her scuba diving certification opened the door to coral restoration, helping restore more than 10,000 corals. And through her non-profit organization, Action for Ocean, she has brought together marine scientists, storytellers, and coastal communities to work on conservation with a special focus on training and supporting women. As coral reefs in East Africa face mounting pressure from climate change, overfishing and pollution, she believes it's important to build more local diving skills to protect the ecosystems that millions of people rely on.
Scientists claim that the Earth's best climate ally might be hiding in plain sight as the oceans absorb most of the planet's excess heat, as well as a substantial amount of man-made carbon emissions. They believe that preserving oceans could be an invaluable tool in the battle against climate change.
Through a dive lab she set up, she has offered fully funded scuba diving trainings and certifications to around 100 divers, 49% of them being women. But challenges still persist.
When you go to the coastal communities, most of the wives, they depend on the permission they get from their husbands, to do such activities. So if you want to encourage more women, especially in coastal communities, to come into the water, you need not to exclude the men. You need to make the men part of the conversation.
By 2030, Nancy aims to train 150 divers to expand the country's capacity to study the ocean. She hopes that with training in scuba diving, marine scientists, communities, and even storytellers will be inspired to conserve what they see. Isaac Lucando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Let's now take a look at your business news. Here's what's ahead. East African countries to present their spending plans for the next 12 months this Thursday. And the double tragedy of Tunisia's brain drain, taking away its best and keeping away foreign investment.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else We'll show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Ethiopian authorities are forecasting overall spending to rise in the next fiscal year, mainly due to costs related to the US-Israeli war on Iran. The country's finance minister estimates overall spending will rise to roughly $14.69 billion in the 2026-27 fiscal year from $11.9 billion in the current fiscal year, or 21%. A budget deficit of 1.4% of GDP is expected next fiscal year, smaller than the 2.2% the finance ministry forecast a year ago. The government also predicts economic growth of 10.1% next year, similar to this year's growth. Finance ministers in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania are expected to present their 2026-27 budgets to their parliaments on Thursday. This comes as investors focus on how the finance ministers will shield their economies from cost shocks linked to the war on Iran while keeping debt in check. The Kenyan Finance Ministry projected earlier this month a budget deficit of 5.4% of GDP in the fiscal year starting next month, slightly narrower than an estimated deficit of 6.4% this financial year. In neighboring Uganda, analysts cautioned that the war shock on fuel prices could strain government spending plans. Uganda Airlines has signed a commitment with Boeing to acquire 10 new aircraft. The move is aimed at strengthening the national carrier's fleet, expand connectivity and support the country's economic development goals. Under the agreement, the airline plans to add 8 passenger aircraft to its fleet and purchase 2 cargo aircraft. Ugandan broadcaster UBC says the agreement is worth $984.64 million. The airline said the acquisition will increase its capacity to serve regional, continental and international markets while supporting trade, tourism, investment and cargo transportation. Meanwhile, Tanzania has launched an AI-powered tourism platform capable of supporting more than 56 international languages. The move comes as the country seeks to boost visitor numbers and showcase its tourism attractions ahead of co-hosting the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations with Kenya and Uganda. CGTN's Isaac Lukando reports.
At 8 million visitors by 2030, Tanzania has lofty goals for its tourism sector. With the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations on the horizon, officials are looking to use Africa's biggest football tournament to put the country before a global audience.
AFCON 2027. The tournament will bring together 24 nations from across Africa and is expected to attract about 1.8 million spectators in stadiums, as well as nearly 1.9 billion television viewers worldwide.
To help capture that audience, Tanzania has launched the Tanzania Tourism Companion, an AI-powered platform designed to guide visitors before, during and after the tournament. Experts already see its potential.
That information, if we promote it well, we can tap into people who will be flying from Ghana to Tanzania to understand exactly where they will be, the environment, what they will find, what they can do, what is the cost, and who is actually capable and verified to offer them service.
The platform supports more than 56 international languages and forms part of the government's Digital Destination Marketing and Communication Center initiative aimed at modernizing the country's tourism. Officials say it will allow visitors to access destination information, book accommodation, transport and attractions, and receive support on a single platform.
Tourism is one of Tanzania's biggest foreign exchange earners. Last year, the country received close to 6 million visitors and $4.4 billion in revenue. As AFCON 2027 approaches, authorities hope digital tools like the AI Tourism Companion will help convert football fans into future tourists.
But experts say technology alone will not be enough. They argue that private sector participation will be key to the platform's success.
Tanzania Tourist Board should also think about creating workshops that can explain what exactly AI is and how service providers, especially SMEs, can actually adopt and use it, because we can use it in different levels.
Officials say the platform will also help promote lesser-known destinations across the country and improve access to tourism services. Authorities hope the technology will not only improve the tourist experience, but also ensure that more people benefit from Tanzania's growing tourism sector. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Across Africa, many countries are seeing some of their best talent emigrating for better opportunities in other countries. Health workers, engineers and other professionals leave to escape poor infrastructure, low compensation and limited career progression. Tunisia is among the countries with the biggest concerns. There, experts say a vicious circle of sorts has emerged. High-skilled talent are leaving because of stagnant growth, while the lack of local talent is deterring the foreign investment needed to create high-quality jobs. Adnan Chauchi reports from Tunis.
Tunisia produces thousands of engineers every year, but many are choosing to build their careers abroad. The Tunisian Order of Engineers says tens of thousands have left, raising concerns over the country's ability to retain the talent needed for technology, industry and infrastructure.
Today, the working environment in Tunisia does not allow engineers to innovate, strive or carry out technical studies under proper conditions. This is a dangerous situation that has pushed thousands, even tens of thousands of Tunisian engineers from all fields and specializations to leave the country.
For many engineers, low pay is the first reason for leaving, but money is not the only factor. Many are also searching for clearer career paths, stronger projects, and work environments where their skills are fully valued.
The first driver of brain drain is financial. Engineers naturally aspire to a decent standard of living. In Tunisia, many engineers cannot live comfortably on their salaries, nor are they employed in positions that fully value their skills. Even engineers with a respectable income are still looking for a real professional path. In Tunisia, that opportunity is often limited.
Economists say weak investment is making the problem worse. As local opportunities shrink, demand for Tunisian engineers remains strong abroad, especially in advanced economies investing in high-tech and knowledge-based sectors.
Weak investment is another factor. Investors are no longer investing as they used to, and the share of investment in GDP has fallen sharply, from around 25% in 2010 to only about 8% today. Another important external factor is the very strong demand for Tunisian engineers abroad. These are advanced economies that invest heavily in high-knowledge content sectors, creating more opportunities for engineers.
The impact could be felt across key sectors, from renewable energy to digital transformation and industrial development. Experts say Tunisia needs better working conditions and more support for innovation to keep its engineers at home.
Tunisia is not short of engineering talent. The challenge is creating the jobs, investment and career prospects that can keep that talent at home. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
As London Tech Week brings together technology companies from around the world, some Chinese firms are using the event to look beyond customers and investors and focus on partnerships. Whether it is combining Chinese robotics hardware with British software expertise or creating opportunities for European technologies to be tested in China, collaboration is emerging as a key theme. Jen Copperstake reports.
The exhibition floor at London Tech Week is packed with demonstrations of AI-powered software and the ways it can be applied in the real world. Even this perfume-making machine uses algorithms to create personalized scents.
For Chinese companies exhibiting here, the focus is on combining strengths. Bringing expertise in areas like robotics and hardware, they're looking for British partners in software, research and innovation.
One company doing exactly that is Deep Robotics from Hangzhou. Founded in 2017, it develops four-legged robots with a wide range of uses, from industrial inspections to emergency response and academic research. The company is now working with a British software partner as it expands internationally.
You can still have a lot of good and wonderful
software company and the AI startup company. And also they need the cost-effective hardware, especially the robotic hardware maybe from China in the future. So we can find a balance point, integration point together.
One of those partners is Olo Robotics, a UK company whose software helps robots navigate, analyze data, and operate more autonomously. They say the partnership makes the most of the two countries' complementary strengths.
The UK hardware scene is not really up to the grade at the moment. I think there's every opportunity for that to happen, but at the moment that's not really where our focus is. Deep Robotics have been around for a good while, and they're a very high quality product, and that's why we're keen to work with them, because we can make sure that these partnerships are not just short-term things, they're long-term.
Also focused on long-term ties, a delegation from Shanghai promoting collaboration between Europe and China in green and low-carbon technologies. Their pitch: bring your new tech ideas to China and test them in a real-world environment.
We will create 6 real scenarios for different technologies specific in new energy and low carbon sectors for technologies to be tested in Shanghai. And this is a very good opportunity for these new technologies to be tested and promoted to the world.
Whether it's robotics, artificial intelligence, or green technology, innovation doesn't happen in isolation. For the Chinese companies exhibiting here, London Tech Week is not just a showcase for new technology, but a place to find future partners and opportunities across Europe. Jen Copestake, CGTN, London.
And let's head to your sports news. South Africa are set to open the FIFA World Cup at the iconic Estadio Azteca in Mexico City on Thursday afternoon local time. The Bafana take on the co-host Mexico before South Korea and Czechia complete the first round of fixtures from Group A later in the day. The Rainbow Nation is back in the big time for the first time since it hosted the tournament in 2010. Their preparations have been far from ideal, with visa issues delaying their departure. South Africa opened that 2010 tournament, funnily enough, against Mexico. The world still remembers the sound to thousands of vuvuzelas buzzing around Soccer City in Johannesburg that night.